Hey everybody, today is Monday, January 2nd, 2023. Coming up on the show today, from the movie Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody, editor Daysha Broadway.
It's my first feature, and it's also about Whitney Houston. There's this extra layer of pressure added to that from the audience. I'm getting this great song that everyone loves that no one will let me cut down further. There were some powers that be that were like, you will not cut down this song. And I was like, okay. So that's the thing about the national anthem, and that was a fight. That was something that Clive very much was like, you cannot touch her vocals on this. Do not change a single thing.
Yes, all that and more on this edition of The Rough Cut. All right, 2023. It's a new year, a new day, so to speak. What will 2023 hold for us? I don't know. I'm just taking this one day at a time, 1 week at a time, and one podcast at a time. So what project, what editor is kicking off The Rough Cut this year? Well, I'm glad you asked. Editor Daysha Broadway is on the show. And you may remember that she was on back in September of 21 to talk about her work on HBO'S A Black Lady Sketch Show, along with her co-editors Stephanie Filo and Jessica Hernandez. As a matter of fact, the three would go on to win an Emmy Award for their work. Now get this, the day of that Emmy win, Daysha would get some more news that would change her life and provide another big step up in her career. She got the news that she would be editing her first big studio film. Up until that moment, it was all TV and docs and indies. And not only would this be a studio film, but a biopic about arguably one of the most iconic female vocalists to ever dominate the charts. The film, of course, is Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody. Directing the film would be Kasi Lemmons, who made her feature directing debut 25 years earlier with the highly acclaimed family drama Eve's Bayou. So Daysha was definitely taking on quite a bit for her first feature editing gig. And I know she has a lot to say about all that, which we will get to right after a few quick words about a company that not only helped to bring you this podcast, but can help you out immensely the next time you have a film or TV show to make. Now, if you're doing a film about Whitney Houston, you probably have most of the music stuff pretty well taken care of. Otherwise, you're going to need a little help making that film sound as great as it possibly can. And you can get that help from the folks who provide the best production audio in the business. And those folks happen to call themselves Extreme Music. The music part is obvious, but why Extreme Music? Because they have an extremely big catalog of tracks, all created by the top musicians and composers working today. And despite being extremely big, it's extremely easy to find what you're looking for. Their website provides an oh-so-simple-to-use interface that will let you search on all kinds of metadata. For example, genre, instrumentation, tempo, even lyrics. And if you just can't put into words what you want, Extreme Music will let you send them a track, and then they'll find you some of theirs that are just like it, which is extremely powerful. And once you have those tracks, you can even customize the length and instrumentation to suit your needs. Why would you ever look anywhere else the next time you need great music? Well, you wouldn't. Nobody smart enough to listen to this podcast would make the mistake of going anywhere else. So the next time you have a film or TV show to make it with our friends and Rough Cut sponsor, Extreme Music. All right then, I want to dance with somebody. Or at the very least, I want to talk to somebody about editing. So please help me welcome today's special guest, Daysha Broadway.
What if we just talk and stuff?
It works both ways. Sometimes it's too early, sometimes it's a little too late. Well, Daysha, I know you're a wonderful editor. What we're going to try and find out is how good an actor you are.
Oh, God.
Because we got to pretend like we haven't talked about a lot of this stuff already. So what we're going to pretend to do is to go back to, I think, December 2021. I think I have the date right. I saw you in the Avid office in LA for a little project we were doing. And at that point, you had the gig, but you hadn't started yet, I don't think.
No, I started October of 2021. What happened was I had the gig and I was going to Boston the next month. And so that's what I was freaking out about.
Okay, so the freaking out part. So let's talk about your frame of mind at the time and any advice you may have gotten that night that might have helped you sort things out.
God, that was a year ago, huh? Like, almost to the day. That was a year ago. Yeah, I saw you and Jeff Ford was there because you were about to interview him for that project. And I was freaking out because, well, it was my first feature. Obviously, it was my first theatrical release feature. And I had been editing it for about 4 months because we had been shooting for about 3. And my editor's cut was due when I got to Boston, which was already strange. It was like I have to move my life to Boston for 3 months, but also my cut is due when I get there. And then I was like, Matt, I'm a little freaked out. It was just a lot of pressure. And I was telling you and Jeff this, I was like, it's just that it's my first feature. And it's also about Whitney Houston. There's this extra layer of pressure added to that from the audience that hasn't even, I don't know why I was thinking about the audience at the time. I was obviously just really immersed in the storytelling, but there was something about it that was like, every time I do something, I want to make sure it feels true to Whitney because she was a real person. Like something about cutting a film for the first time and it being about a real person who was here only 10 years ago was just like this added extra pressure. And Jeff said, we were asking him about Spider-Man and he was like, well, I think about it this way. I'm going to make someone's favorite Spider-Man movie. Like, even if it's one person, if someone's going to love this and it's going to be their favorite Spider-Man movie. I was like, it's a really good attitude to have going into this director's cut with Kasi, who I had never worked with before, who I was like, I really wanted to impress because she's Kasi Lemmons. But that was really great advice. That was really helpful because I was like, that's right. Someone's going to love this. Of all the Whitney things that have dropped, someone's going to be like, that one's the best though.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, the last time we spoke, for the podcast that is, you were up for an Emmy for your work on a Black Lady sketch show, which you won.
Yay!
So your career, let's pause to celebrate that.
I love it. I'll drink my tea to that.
So your career is definitely on an upswing.
Mm-hmm.
We talk a lot about the importance of recognition, just from how you feel about yourself, but also how it can affect your career.
Mm-hmm.
So did that win or any other factors play into how you came to be the editor for I Want to Dance with Somebody?
No, actually. I was recommended to Kasi Lemmons by Terry Shropshire because obviously they worked together several times. And Terry told Kasi that she believed in me, which, first of all, that was enough for me. I was like, you can just pack my stuff up. I'm good. Like, I feel great. I just look up to Terry so much. So it was an honor to even hear her talking about me in that way. And so I was nominated for an Emmy, but I had not won yet when I got the job. I was actually on my way to the Emmys. My friend was like zipping up my dress when I found out that I got the job. We were about to go downstairs. Steph Philo was in my hotel room. We were all just packing up our stuff. And my agents texted me, oh my God, you got the Whitney movie. And I was like, huh? And I literally threw my phone on the bed because the way my mind works is I can't handle those two things at the same time. It was like too much. So I was like, okay, I will look at that later because, I had been nominated 2 times before. So I just expected to have the same outcome. I kind of was like, okay, we'll go, I'll have to like wear this dress and we'll go down there and we'll talk to a bunch of people and then we'll leave. But then we won. And I was like walking up the stairs as they were playing Megan Thee Stallion, which may have been a first in Emmy history. Like there were several firsts that night. I was like trying not to dance to this ratchet music. It was like that I loved because it was our theme song. But as I was walking up there, I was like, I have to give a speech. And oh my God, I'm going to do this Whitney Houston movie afterwards. Like it all just kind of came crashing down into my brain as I was walking up the stage. But I think the Emmy nomination may have been something that Kasi could take to the producers. And then when I won, she probably was like, see? I've already hired this girl, but look, see, she now comes with a statue. If you need that, if you need a statue, here it is.
So Terry made the recommendation, which right there was enough for you.
Yeah.
Kasi obviously puts a lot of weight into a recommendation from Terry Shropshire.
Yeah.
And also the Emmy nomination helps with talking to the studio. Kasi's still going to want to talk to you and feel you out and get a sense of what your approach to the craft of editing is and the chemistry between the two of you. What about that process?
It was a strange, very quick process because Kasi was coming onto the project late. I think she only had 5 weeks of prep. It was crazy. So by the time, she hired me, it was kind of like, okay, within the next 3 weeks, we're rolling principal photography. So the first interview I had with her, first meeting I had with her, we just immediately clicked, which was great. That's always a great feeling because everyone's always interviewing you when you're an editor, but you're also kind of interviewing them because you kind of, you want to make sure that because you're going to spend so much time together, that you guys really understand each other. And so it was great to feel that right off the bat. Like, I kind of went into the project like, I'm obviously going to do this if they ask me to do this because of all the pieces. But I was kind of like, why is there another Whitney Houston movie? And so I really wanted to hear from Kasi what her plans for the film were. And I was like, okay, great. We're on the same page. Like, both of us really just want to remind people how badass Whitney Houston was. Like, and we want to humanize an icon and put some respect on her name. So it was great because we had, I think, like an hour or two long chat in which we talked about our lives, and she asked me a bunch of questions about, like, my process and what I thought of the script and about Whitney and what I thought I could, do. But we also just talked about life. Like, we just talked about life a lot and got along really well. And so it was like, I think it got to the point where she was like, I know you can do this because, like, your resume is all of these things and I know you can do this. And she loved 40-year-old version. And I was like, Rob Wilson cut the Sundance version and she saw the Netflix version and she was like, okay, well, I liked it a lot. So she's like, I know you can do this, but it's more about intention with the film at this point. Like, do we have the same focus and intention? And we did. So that was great.
What was appreciably, if anything, different from the way you approach cutting something like a Black Lady sketch show to doing a big feature like I Want to Dance with Somebody?
Time was the biggest difference. And obviously working very closely with the director, because in television you get like a couple of days with the director and then you're with the producer, the showrunner for the rest of it. And then your episode's done, 2 weeks later. It's just on and you're on to the next thing. And this was something that Terry told me too. When I talked to her before meeting Kasi, me and Terry talked. And she was like, something that you're going to notice is that you have time. You have time with the material. So you can take your time and just sit with it and try anything you want. You have time to try things. And so I think that was interesting at first. I was like, because when they were shooting, I didn't have much time. I didn't feel like I had a whole lot of time. I felt like they would shoot something and then I was like keeping a calendar and I was like, okay, by this day I need to be at least done with these 3 scenes and then move on to this scene, because once they finish Principal and they go to LA and shoot the Beverly Hilton, then it needs to be XYZ. I need to be done because then my editor's cut is on this time. Like, I had this calendar laid out, so I didn't feel like I had a lot of time. I had an extra week before the editor's cut was due, like before I was going to screen it for Kasi, but that was going to be in Boston. So that travel time was cutting into the time. And I was like, what is all this time Terry's talking about? I don't have it. But then then I understood what she was talking about, because when I got to Boston, I screened the editor's cut for Kasi. She was, quote, impressed. Ooh. And crying, which was, again, I can pack my shit up. I'm good. But no, then we had time. Then, we spent so much time on the director's cut. She had a lot of time. I think it was 12 weeks. And then I was like, I get it. Like, we can really mine this material and spend time on it and sit with it. I've been cutting the film for a year, from October to November, October 2021 to November 2022. I was cutting it. And yes, I say November as in last month. We were still cutting this thing. So yeah, I think that was the biggest difference.
So another big difference, obviously, is the musical element. I mean, this movie is wall-to-wall, as it should be, wall-to-wall Whitney Houston hits. Due to that aspect of it, did that change your process to how you do sound, whether it's the way you do the tracks in the Avid, the way you monitor things? How did just the overwhelming presence of music in the film affect your process?
So I have now had 2 composers, Amanda Jones and Shonda Dancy, both tell me that I'm a very musical editor. And I didn't know what that meant at first. I was like, does it feel like I'm just cutting music videos? What are you guys saying? But I love the music. I love cutting those sequences. I think I would cut the montages. I used a lot of temp score before we found Shonda, because we didn't have Shonda right away when we started post. Oddly enough, I don't think they had considered bringing a composer on. And me and Casey were like, what? What are you talking about? so we were like, no, we need a composer. But I feel like it was, it was just supposed to be, like you said, wall-to-wall Whitney music. But that wasn't necessarily the tone that we wanted to create. And I was like, no, I want big, sweeping, beautiful music. And I want, in the 90s, when we're in that era, I wanted to feel a little bit like Waiting to Exhale. I wanted it to feel like the music to feel kind of like that. And like there's the scene you were talking about earlier where Whitney says, all Black women are exhausted. I asked John Warhurst if we could just use the strings from Why Does It Hurt So Bad under that scene, because they're beautiful. It's a gorgeous song. And we had, one of the coolest things was having all the split tracks. And I had Whitney's raw, untouched vocals for Why Does It Hurt So Bad? And just listening to that would just blow my mind. And then I was like, but this, the strings are gorgeous. Like, what if we use it under here and really give it this nod to Waiting to Exhale, since we don't mention the movie at all in the film. So I actually really liked and appreciated that. As far as my assistants go, I don't know how much they loved all the tracks. I was like, there has to be, there's so many audio tracks on that timeline, and keeping track of all of it too, because, I would use a lot of temp score. There was some John Williams in there. There was some Newman in there. It was a lot I used throughout the film, especially in moments like Rehab and things like that, where I thought we could use some big score to really drive home the emotion. It was a lot to keep track of for my assistants, but Oscar winner John Warhurst was a great help. And he was all the way in London, which was tricky. He was so far ahead in time, but always open to communication. I would ask for something, he'd show me something back. I did a lot of music editing myself because I'm used to that because of reality TV. I was like, oh, I just know how to do it. So I would do it really quickly and then send it to him just to make sure I wasn't insane. And he'd be like, no, this is great. But then he would add, little changes here and there. But he was probably the best help when it came to that.
Well, since you brought up John,
Oscar winner John
Warhurst, supervising sound editor John Warhurst, and Oscar winner Nina Hartstone,
yes,
and Oscar winner Paul Massey, music mixer.
Yes.
All three of whom won those Oscars working on Bohemian Rhapsody. Mm-hmm. So they come into this knowing a thing or two about iconic voices and giving them a theatrical experience. Let's start with the iconic voice. In Bohemian Rhapsody, it was a mix of Freddie Mercury, Rami Malek's voice, as well as a professional Freddie Mercury impersonator. Mm. She is the voice. You have to use Whitney's voice.
Yeah.
But to make that more believable, what were the techniques you used to make that happen?
So John had already planned out, I think, a year of planning with Naomi, because Naomi can sing, and she can sing in Whitney's register, which was a phenomenal help and aid to production, obviously, when we were talking about shooting these big performances. So there are some times where the song will start out as Naomi and it'll switch to Whitney. And sometimes you cannot tell. It's at the beginning of the film, Naomi's singing a cappella. She's singing in the church. She's singing with her mom, she's singing with Robin. And then she sings The Greatest Love of All. But there's a point in The Greatest Love of All where it switches from Naomi to Whitney, because Whitney is Whitneying. She's hitting these notes, and, no one can do that. But what was great and what really sells it, I've seen articles talking about how Naomi nailed the lip sync. And it's because she was singing. Naomi was singing live on that stage. And that's why you see the veins popping out of her neck, which me and Casey were like, we will never cut around. When you start cleaning it up, do not clean up the veins. We want to see it. She was really singing, and John was able to mix in her voice with Naomi's. And so I already had those tracks from production and from John when I started cutting those sequences.
Knowing how much music is going to be in the film, I think there's 22 songs. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's right. It was just nonstop music.
I never counted, but that sounds right.
But at the same time, you have this narrative to drive. You got a story to tell, in a certain amount of time. And if we just sat on a song for the whole song, then, well, there goes 3 minutes.
Yeah.
You have this unbelievable challenge where you've got to mix the performance intercut with things moving forward in her life, the rise of her career. And you don't want to mess around too much with Whitney's work, her art. But at the same time, I got to get the machine turning here. I got to get on to the next scene.
You know what was interesting is there was a lot of restructuring Kasi and I did in post because the movie used to start with the Super Bowl. It used to start very differently. And it was, big Hollywood opening and it made sense. It's like, oh, it's going to be big. It's going to be huge. There's jets flying. It's, it's chaos. And then you kind of walk in like, am I in the right movie? What is this Top Gun? Where am I? But at some point, Kasi and I and John, actually, we all kind of thought, I think we had tested it. We did a friends and family and we're like, it really should start a little quieter, a little more intimate. And I was on a phone call with John Warhurst and I was like, what if it just starts in the black and you just hear her voice? And he was thinking the exact same thing. He was like, I was thinking that, like, we could just start. And then her voice becomes a character. Whitney's voice stars in the film alongside Naomi. And because I know the audience is about to get real Whitney voice throughout this entire film, I want to hit them over the head with it right away. So you start with Whitney's voice and then you hear Naomi go, that's actually Naomi. And so I mixed the two of them. Then you would go back to Whitney, just saw that you were. Like it was back and forth and it's just in the black and you start to see these like band members setting up the stage, which was all shots that I just cheated before action and after cut. So the whole opening sequence was not shot. I just created it in post because we wanted an entrance to the film that sort of eased you into Naomi. Like you see little glimpses of her and she moves over here and then she does this and the band is setting up an anticipation of this woman about to speak, about to sing, and big score. I wanted a huge score and obviously Shonda delivered. And then we go to teenage Whitney, and so then it kind of like, then it's like, okay, now I know where I am. And now I know who this is about, what this is about. I'm going to hear real Whitney's voice. And you kind of settled. So after that, once we figured all that out, there were some performances that I intercut, like you're talking about, because it was, the language had sort of been established, right? Kasi was very adamant that The Greatest Love of All not be intercut because it's the first time we see young Whitney perform in front of a group of people. It's not in church. It's not her current safe space, which is in church. Like, that's just what she grew up in. It's like easy. But then there were other things like the only scripted intercutting was I Will Always Love You. That was in the script. It was always you were always going to see the wedding. It was longer. You were going to see more of the wedding. There was going to be more of the song and things like that. But once we started, because I think Kasi's director's cut was 3 hours and 30 minutes or something, 3 hours, 38 minutes. Once we started really looking at it, there were times in the film where I was like, what's great about these scenes is they don't really connect. They just kind of are amazing scenes that these actors can perform perfectly. But some of them are commenting on the others. So what if we intercut them? So when Whitney walks into John's office and he's like, I want you to fire Robin. And she's like, no. I was like, what if we intercut that with the Sometimes interview where the woman is asking her about being the boss of her family? I was like, it's kind of, it's commenting on what we're seeing. So, let's try to intercut it. And Kasi looked at me and said, try it. She does. She was interesting. Try it. And so then once I did that in the director's cut, then it was like, okay, this really works. Like, it really adds weight to what I'm seeing. I really see the girl behind the girl that's yelling at her father and trying to stand up to him, even though she's nervous. Now I can cut back to this interview where she's cracking And she's like, and I know she's nervous. You see her hands twitching and she needs something to take the edge off. Now I understand the pressure. I understand what this interview is really saying, and I see it. So then it was like all the performances after that, except the medley at the end. We could do the same thing. We can give you information and I want to dance with somebody. We can move the story forward. So I'm getting this great song that everyone loves that no one will let me cut down further. there were some powers that be that were like, you will not cut down this song. And I was like, okay, well, let me try to make this work by intercutting the story so that the audience isn't just sitting and watching this performance. And I think it worked. I think it added weight to it. It added weight to It's Not Right, But It's Okay. All of those scenes were always just scripted to be scene. But me and Kasi kind of found a way to add weight to each one.
I definitely want to ask you about one particular scene that you did cut down and the thinking that maybe the powers that be would have said, no, leave that one intact. But you sang a little bit there in our interview, and I thought, well, I wonder if she did any temp singing as you were trying to structure anything. So editors do temp voices. Did you do any temp singing?
I did some humming. I did not do any singing. What I am, and I found this out on the movie, I am what you call a mimic. And I would have to stop myself because John and Nina and everybody were in London. And anytime we would be on an interview, my assistant Anissa would be like texting me like, you're doing it again. Because I was suddenly speaking in a British accent. And I'd have to stop. I'm like, not trying to be offensive, but I'm a mimic. So if someone's constantly talking to me, I will start to sound like them. And so I did a lot of ADR, like a lot of temp ADR for the movie when we were kind of rewriting things and restructuring. And during the fight with Robin, I was like, I understand Whitney's a goon, but I need her to apologize for this. It's not scripted, but I need her to say, Rob, I'm sorry. I need her to call out to her. I need her to say, Rob, like try to get her to stop breaking the glass. Like all of those added lines, I did temp ADR for her. And so I could do Naomi's voice as Whitney, and I could do Robin. There was one time I did John, and it was really good.
I want to hear you do Clive.
I can't do Clive. I could do John because he was deep. He was just deep. Like he was just angry. And I was like, I understand that. I know where that comes from. I get it.
I can channel that.
I get it. And I understood Whitney. I understood Robin. But if all I had to do was listen to them over and over again, but I never sang, not without a check.
So going back to scenes that you can or cannot cut down, I mean, you're dealing with a person, as you said earlier, this is a real living human being that the whole world knows and has these iconic moments from their life. For example, the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned how originally it was scripted, or at least the first cut of it had the Super Bowl at the beginning.
Yes.
That Super Bowl performance actually is cut down. You do not see her perform the whole national anthem.
Right.
As I was watching, I was like, that's such a big moment. I wonder if they ever considered, like, let's just keep that intact. And then I kind of thought more about it. I was like, well, if you have the whole national anthem in a movie, it's almost going to be a little weird. Like everyone's going to have to stand up and applaud.
It was weird. So that's the thing about the national anthem. And that was a fight. That was something that Clive very much was like, you cannot, to me, to John, to everyone, you cannot touch her vocals on this. Do not change a single thing. And, we're as filmmakers just worried about her being in sync. That's all. we want to make sure we don't want to take the audience out of anything. But we totally respected and understood where that was coming from. It's such an iconic performance. You don't want to alter it. You kind of want to give the audience that performance as they got it and take them back to that space. But there was a version where it was the entire song, and it's cutaways to the crowd singing along and great sweeping shots. Barry shot the hell out of it. And then you screen it and you go, we don't need the whole song. And I think also because I think I Will Always Love You is right around there, which is a full song. I took some time out of it. Don't tell nobody.
Nobody's listening. Don't worry.
Yeah. How would they know?
Did you mean to do that?
I did. No, but it was about, okay, like, is this a concert movie or are we telling a story about this woman's life? So we had done enough. I thought there was enough build up to the performance. And we got this emotional driving story. You know, she's about to go do this huge thing, and she's just trying to do it the way she wants to do it for once. You know, she's telling Ricky, I want it slow. I'm like, well, they're going to want it fast. And she's like, no, I want it slow. I don't want to wear any dresses. Like, so I'm going out there and I'm doing it. And that shot of the mic just sitting in the middle of the stadium by itself, that used to be at the beginning of the movie, but I thought it was more powerful for her to look out at it as she's about to walk out. So it moved that there. And when I did that, I was like, yeah, like that's the story, you know, that's the story. And then I can cut deeper into the song and let her really like just let it rip. Like by the time we get there, she's just going. And it's emotional. A lot of people say it's one of the more emotional beats in the film.
There is dialogue going on while a lot of this music is happening. And, you know, and you're hearing lyrics, vocals in the music. So you've got these sort of conflicting pieces, dialogue with music and vocals, making sure that that dialogue can punch through. You're still getting the vibe of the music, but I got to hear the spoken word and understand what's happening. How do you approach that? Do you do any tricks with EQ or plugins? Anything you can do to make it pop?
Lots of tricks with EQ. Lots of Isotope is my favorite plugin, I think. It just integrates right into Avid, like kind of seamlessly, which is great. But that noise canceling it's so helpful because then it really isolates the vocal of the person talking, and then I can raise it higher than I went without bringing all the other crap with it. You know, it's like you can raise it a little bit higher. A lot of moments, like in particular, the I Want to Dance with Somebody sequence is a big example of what you're talking about, because there was all this dialogue that we added to it that wasn't there before. Same thing with the tour. The tour was scripted to just be 3 songs. And no story. It was just 3 songs. And we started adding in these scenes. We did a pickup of the scenes of her backstage with Bobby because I really wanted the tour to feel like something she should not do again until she's ready, until she can go do it clean. And, you know, obviously Casey agreed, and we came up with these like things. I was like, it just has to be later when she says to Clive, I want to tour. I want to go on a tour again. I really want the audience to go, oh no. I really want them to think about this tour and go, no, she shouldn't be doing that right now. She really, you know, he needs to get better. So adding in these scenes of dialogue and news reporters talking about troubles with Bobby and troubles with her, and Sissy being like, tell her I said to call her mother. You know, that all of that stuff was added in pickups and later. And then it became about, okay, you know, talking to John and being like, okay, I need to re-edit this song because we're going to drop it down right here. I need to mix in So Emotional under this dialogue from I'm Your Baby Tonight. It's like, so it's going to go from I'm Your Baby Tonight to So Emotional, and So Emotional is going to take the hand off, and we're going to come out on stage and she has to sing that song. But we need to find a great way to like mix it and bring in the instrumental so the vocal on the music track isn't fighting with these news reporters, because it's really important what the news reporters are saying, because in the film we don't see Bobby going through all these things. So I need the audience to know. So me and Anissa, my assistant, and Josh Johnson, my assistant, were constantly looking for news articles and videos of like reporters talking about them during that time. And they said really awful things about them during that time. And then we had people re-record it and loop it, and we rewrote it a little bit and was like, okay, this is what they said. But you really have to fine tune it. My assistant, actually, her voice is still in the trailer because we did so many temp ADR tracks of just like us like trying to be like, okay, what are the reporters saying here? They're okay, Bobby's in trouble. He's on probation again, and he's cheating on Whitney again. Like we have to, like it has to be, but Whitney is standing by him. That's the point. Whitney is not leaving him, and they're pretending everything is fine. So it's like, you know, so it was a lot of pre-mixing before it got to John, and then John would send us back a 5-1 mix for our test screenings, which was a lifesaver because there was so much sound mixing that we did on our end that needed help, to be honest.
Well, it's funny hearing you talk about the research you did and finding elements of what the media was doing, how they were reporting on Whitney and Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
There are actually elements in the film of real people. You have Merv Griffin, you have Oprah Winfrey.
Kevin Costner's in there. And
yes, Kevin Costner. Is that something else you had them do, go out and find B-roll or actual elements of these people, or did you have a whole other team dedicated to that?
No, Merv and Oprah were shot that way. And it was always scripted. I was like, okay, Robin's watching television. She's watching Merv Griffin. And depending on which part of the interview I choose to put in the scene, we're going to superimpose Merv on Robin's television. That was always kind of like planned. Kevin Costner was not written that way. It was not planned that way. It was, we shot Naomi. I'm sorry. It's so funny to me. We shot Naomi recreating the I Want to Run to You video. No one will ever see it. It will never surface because it's such a ridiculous video. Like she's like in this white sheet running towards the camera in slow motion. And so that's what was supposed to be there. And then we ended up going, okay, like it's, this moment, this bodyguard moment, it's about her shooting the film and having a miscarriage and literally just ending up on set after the miscarriage, like just right back. She's right back to work. That's what we got to get across. Is like, this happened. Bobby said, you got to move on. You got to keep going. Everyone in her life was like, you got it. Just keep going. It's good. You don't need a break. And she's right back on set. So I needed a sort of transitional element to get us to the bodyguard set. Otherwise, we would just be going from Whitney and Clive talking to Whitney and Clive talking, right? So I needed to build this moment for the movie. But that was, we had to, I had my assistants rip the bodyguard and I watched it again. It had been a while. And I was like, oh yeah, this was actually kind of good. Like it was like a good movie. It takes a left at the end with the sister and everything. It just takes a full left turn. But I still enjoyed it. And so then they ripped it, and then we had to get permission from Warner Brothers and Kevin Costner to use it, which is always great. You want the person who knew her to sign off on the film, and it was great that he did.
Before I forget, I'm sure you could teach them a thing or two about picture editing, but in working with John Warhurst and Nina Hartstone, Oscar winners John Warhurst and Nina Hartstone.
Thank you. We don't want to,
No, I don't. I don't need crap from them. Those two have a short fuse, those Brits.
They do.
Did they teach you anything? Were you able to pick up anything from them in terms of techniques for sound editing, sound mixing, anything like that?
And Nina, in particular, is an amazing ADR. Did you hear my accent almost slip out just there? As soon as I thought of her, I started. Okay, you didn't hear it.
I didn't want to say anything.
Oh shit, you heard it. Okay. Nina is actually a really, really great dialogue editor. I definitely learned things about pitch. And there were some times we would be on the stage and I'd just be like, Nina, do we have him saying this, that we could plug in here just really quick, just so we could test it, just so we could hear it on the stage. And it didn't take her long to find it. And she would find it and mix it in. And all the ADR she recorded just fell right into the movie. So it just seamlessly. And she might attest part of it was my cutting, because you don't cut away just for the line. That's the worst thing you can do, because then it feels like that was an ADR line. It's clear you cut away just to get this line in. So I was very mindful of that while cutting. I was like, I know this is because I attempt half of it, Anissa attempt most of it. We know this is going to be plugged in later. So I was cutting for that. But Nina, her editing and throwing it in was just so seamless. So I have photos of her just at the computer, because I was over her shoulder, just what are you doing? I'm always a student. I always want to learn. So I'm always just hey. But yeah, Nina's a beast. She's great. And sweet.
Yes. A beast on Pro Tools, but a very sweet human being.
Very sweet human being.
You mentioned that working in reality television, that you have to wear a lot of hats.
Mm-hmm.
VFX, I can do that. Music editing, I can do that. You name it, I can do it, because I kind of have to.
Yeah.
You kind of hinted at this a little bit, but how much of that holds up in a feature film? Is it more that, we have people dedicated just to that, you don't have to worry about that?
There were people dedicated. We had an amazing VFX team who were also in London, except for KJ, who's the supervisor. She was floating around. She was in Boston. She was in LA. She was in New York. But I mean, you're right. Like there were some things like temp VFX I was still doing myself because I'm impatient. And I want to, and Kasi is also just green screen makes her break out into hives. Like it does. And I'd be like, no, it's going to be fine. It's going to look like this, but she needs to see it and she needs to know. And if our, VFX editor was backed up, I would just do something in After Effects really quick and I would take like an image off of like Pond 5 or Shutterstock or Getty or something and go, look, it's like a crowd that's like waving flags or something. And I would put it in the green screen and track it and drop it into Avid and go, here's what it will possibly look like. But then we would screen, like our test audience saw those things that I made. And then because it was just something we had to do really quickly. So it was great to have that skill set and to be able to do it very quickly and go, boom, this is better than just showing a green screen. And I'll pass this to my VFX editor, apologize, and say, and just say, like, we just had to do this really quickly, but obviously but this is a VFX shot. And, they would run it through the pipeline. But the music editing, because I was using so much temp score in addition to Whitney's music, I just did it. It was like, I was doing it while I always cut the scene without music, just like, unless it's a performance, and then I have to cut it with that just to sync, make sure the sync is correct. But like just a regular, there are no regular scenes. I don't know why I said regular, but just a scene that wasn't a musical performance, I always cut it without the music and I always watch it without the sound. I always do that. And then I go, okay, it's working. Emotionally, it's working. Now I can score it. And then I would just put it in. There was like a really good John Williams cue called Mother and Daughter. And I put it over the rehab scene where her daughter comes to visit her. And I just did the editing there because I wanted to sell the cut to Kasi. You're just trying to sell the cut, so you just do it. And then I passed it along to John and was like, if I'm an idiot, just let me know. This is great. And he's like, no, it's great.
You got to do the accent.
I have to hear it first. So you have to do it and then I can do it. That's how that works.
Unlike you, I'm not a mimic. I can't do accents.
Yeah.
But what I can do is ask questions. And as long as we're talking about you having a hand in everything, as I watched the credits roll out, there it was, Daysha Broadway co-producer. I wish the audience could see you smiling and posing right now. Everyone pictured Daysha with a big smile on her face. How did you get a co-producer credit on the film?
The producers felt that I had gone above and beyond my call of duty. And part of that was we had like a shoot one day of 180 extras. And I was the director that day. Like I went on set and I directed 180 background actors against green screen because we needed more crowd shots in the tour. Like I said, the tour was meant to be just 3 songs, and then I went in and was like, actually, now it's this. it's 3 songs. I need more crowd. There's cutaways to the backstage. There's all these things. I need them singing along. I need to see people singing along to her music. That'll add to the emotion. It'll add to the adoration. So we know exactly how big her fans were. And so that was like a 14-hour day of just shooting and direct. It was crazy. Like I would walk on and I would hear a walkie go off and say, director walking on or director stepping on. And I'd be like, that's me. They talk about me.
Okay, so that day, that 14-hour day, the next day, or the next time you saw Kasi in person and she knew you had spent a day directing, she just sort of looked at you like, you understand me better now?
Yeah. She called me that day because that was actually like the last day of the pickup shoot. So I had been on set the entire week with her, and which was great. I was shadowing her. It was great. And I got to see, Naomi and Ashton and Nafessa and everybody working, and Clarke. The whole cast came back for that. It was great. I was on a boat at one point and, people were throwing up over the side of the boat and I was just like trying to look at the monitor and not die. It was a crazy week. And she called me like halfway through that day and was like, hey, director, how's it going? And I was like, man, get out of here. I'm tired and my feet hurt. But no, it was cool. The VFX team was there. Like I said, KJ was there. We had the coolest AD who's done like, I don't know, 800,000 movies. And there were 2 producers there. It was a good crew. And the DP was awesome. And I had like my little clipboard and I was like, here are the shots. And we put up the shots on the wall. And I was like, we need this. And we can combine these 2. I was like trying to save time. I was like, actually, we can combine these 2. Because in my head, I'm thinking of the edit. And I'm like, this is the same song. If we just move the camera around, we can actually combine these 2 shots. So knock that off the list. And, and so then we had a really good plan going into it. And I think Casey was proud of me. I got the shots I needed.
I'm sure she was.
Yeah, I think so.
Did you sit her down at the Avid and say, okay, now you try and edit?
No, she would never. Casey sits on her couch and points her finger at me and goes, yeah, and then take tails off of that one. And I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah.
So obviously you got some new experience directing.
Mm-hmm.
What's your big takeaway in terms of whether it was about yourself, about Whitney Houston, about directing, about editing? When you think back on this project, what will be the thing you remember, like, this is what changed for me as a person or in my career?
I learned a lot about Whitney, obviously, because I did so much research about her. Because I knew about Whitney the icon, but not Whitney the person, and really wanted to make sure we got Whitney the human being, the girl from Jersey, correct, like from East Orange, New Jersey. And wanted to make sure we got that correct. I learned that I am very good in a high pressure situation. I learned that just people telling me like throughout the process, being like, you are calm, and just like trying to make sure that I was okay. And I'm like, no, I am. Like, I really just I wanted to make sure the story was tight. And I didn't want any holes in the story. I don't want it to be that kind of film where we're like, oh, but what about that doesn't make sense. I was like, it's very got to be tight, and I'm a perfectionist. So I was, every frame I was like, what about, I don't know about that. And Casey would be like, I'm not bumped by it. And I'm like, yeah. Wait, I'm bumped by it. Give me like a second. But I think that there's a whole, I think filmmaking is so different from television. It's the time, but it's also the people. There's so many more people involved. So just that communication and knowing how to communicate your ideas and being able to stand up for your ideas and fight for your ideas is so important. And you're not going to win every single time. And it's important to know how to dust off the losses and keep pushing, because the film still has to be made and it still has to be something that you're proud of in the end. So I think I learned a lot from watching Casey navigate those things and also navigating them myself and collaborating with people who, aren't necessarily filmmakers, but their expertise is in a different area. Right. So they're looking at it in a different way and trying to understand that way and trying to just make sure we all end up on the same page in the end. It's very tricky, but I learned a lot about myself in doing it, I think.
Well, Daysha, you and I have done a lot of talking lately, which is good. I enjoyed every second of it. I hope you did too.
Okay. I was going to say, are you annoyed?
Not outwardly, no.
Nice. I wore my Boston sweater for you.
I know. I appreciate it. You are the best.
Jeez.
You did an amazing job. You're one of my all-time favorite people.
Thank you. You're one of mine.
You had an incredible year that you absolutely earned.
Thank you.
But it's a new year. Here we are going into 2023.
Mm-hmm.
I got to ask that generic New Year type question. What is your either resolution for 2023 or what do you hope to accomplish in this new year?
My resolution is rest. That's the answer.
That's not a bad idea.
That's the damn tweet. No, I want to rest. I want to purchase a home. I want to spend more time with my family, especially my little nephew. He is 3. And when I went to Boston to make this film, I came back and he was talking more and that irritated me that I missed it. So I don't want to miss things. But I do want to sleep.
That's good advice for everybody. What a great resolution for all of us. Get more rest and spend more time with family and friends. Sometimes those two are at odds, but we should all make an attempt to do both. I know I will. Maybe I'll sneak in that break I didn't get to take at the end of December. Who knows? What I do know is that it's always a treat to talk to Daysha. In fact, I also did another interview with Daysha and director Kasi Lemmons back when the film premiered in New York. So maybe keep an eye out for that in the coming weeks. I will let you know on social media when the time is right. In the meantime, thank you, Daysha Broadway, for talking with us today. It has been quite a journey following your career so far, and I know we are all excited to see where you go next. Where you should go next is to Avid.com to find out what's new with Avid Media Composer. The same NLE that Daysha used to win her Emmy on a Black Lady sketch show, and the same one she used to cut her first feature film, I Want to Dance with Somebody. New stuff going into Media Composer all the time, so even if you think you know it already, take another look. As always, there's a little link in the show notes to help you do just that. Well, there you have it. The 2023 season of The Rough Cut is off and running. I will do my best to bring you interviews with editors and filmmakers that will entertain, educate, and hopefully inspire you. So please keep coming back for more. Until the next one, this is Matt Fury thanking you for joining me right here on The Rough Cut.